It's almost Christmas, but that means the year is almost over, and in this year particular, that means it's almost the end of the decade. And with that, I do tons of the end of the year list, but this year I'm adding a ton of the end of the decade list. I've already done top 10 horror films for this decade, which you guys can check up above, but what I'm going to be doing today is going over my top 10 comedies of the decade. Now, of course, comedies and film are subjective, so some of your favorite films from this year this decade might not even be in this list, but if they aren't, make sure to comment down below. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. What similarities did we have? What differences did we not have? And all that sorts of stuff. Let's discuss it down below, and of course, if you guys are new here, hit that like and subscribe button. Get comfy, guys. Let's get straight into this list, and thank you guys again so much for clicking on this. I can't wait to discuss with you guys down below in the comments. Coming in at my number 10 is going to be The Other Guys. I have such an utter blast with this movie. I love Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg, and their chemistry with one another is perfection. I actually wish we would have gotten a sequel to this instead of Daddy's Home and Daddy's Home 2, because again, their chemistry is wonderful, and even though they have great chemistry in those movies, why didn't we get them in another The Other Guys? Because that's a movie I felt like that was warranted for a sequel, because you could just keep making up concepts with these police officers going out into this way. Mark Wahlberg, this was like the very first comedic performance he ever gave out, and I loved it. It really showed that he has more of an edge to him, and I wanted more of that comedic purposes. I love when he comes into these comedic moments and is able to land it with such great timing. And again, Will Ferrell, I find him to be hilarious. While this isn't my favorite Will Ferrell movie in particular, it is pretty high up there, and I have a blast of it. And when I'm looking at the decade, this is easily his best film, sadly, and it sucks that we haven't gotten that like all-star Will Ferrell comedy this decade. It's been quite a while, but still, I really love The Other Guys. And the way that I kind of do this list is almost every single one of these comedies I've watched countless times over the decades, some way more than I want to even talk about, but The Other Guys is definitely one of those films for sure. And plus, the Dwayne Johnson and Samuel L. Jackson steal the show within the first act of this movie. And coming in at my number 9 is going to be Pop Star. Now, if you haven't seen Pop Star yet, go check it out. Stop this video, put it on for a watch later, and go check it out. It has Andy Samberg, and it's created by the guys who did Lonely Island. What is there to say? This is a complete mockumentary, kind of looking into the perspective of what if this pop star, kind of in the sense of a Justin Bieber, had this whole downfall, and it's so fascinating, but it's also very hilarious, and I love what Andy Samberg does in this film. This is a comedy, too, that the trailer I did not think was that funny. Like, I was very disappointed when I saw the trailer. I'm like, oh, this is the guys who made Hot Rod? That movie's underrated. Then you actually go to see the movie, and the songs are hilarious. They're actually really catchy and great as well. Me and my friends used to bop to them in the car and like drive down blasting the Osama bin Laden one. There's just so many hilarious moments in here. I really don't want to give any big moments in here because a lot of people have not seen Pop Star, but there is one moment in particular with a turtle that had me dying. Coming in at my number 8 is going to be Ted, Seth MacFarlane's first directorial debut for filmmaking, and it is a wonderful one. While I actually really like Ted 2 and actually find it to be quite hilarious, I wanted to put Ted 1 in here because I think as a cohesive narrative experience, Ted is still the best out of every film that he's created. Narratively, it's fantastic. Heart-wise, heart-wise, all that sorts of stuff thematically is great. The concept of that this kid just wishes for his teddy bear to come to life and then it does is superb. And overall, in the end of the day, it is one of the most hilarious films that I've seen of this decade. I love rewatching it. Ted is a fascinating character and actually has some of the best visual effects of this year. They really brought that bear to life. And again, another Mark Wahlberg comedy hits the mark perfectly. It's just a hilarious movie that you can just completely keep watching. And of course, Thunder Buddies for life. Coming in at number 7 is one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time now, and that is The Night Before. I love watching The Night Before. I already got my Christmas sweater on right now because it is the end of the year. And The Night Before stars Seth Rogen, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Anthony Mackie as 3 friends who have been friends since like high school, and now they're kind of just growing up, and this might be their last Christmas all together from doing their traditions. I love what this movie has to say about growing up and the thematics of it. The director of this is one of the best talented directors for that because he is great at getting comedy, but also making it feel like it's real. He did that with 50-50, he did that with this year's Longshot, and he's doing it in this one, The Night Before, where it doesn't feel like it's a comedy. It feels like you were really following these best friends and that these could be in your shoes, and that it doesn't feel all crazy and wild, and even though there are some crazy and wild moments in here, it does feel like something that you would go and experience on. And being inside a Christmas movie, it follows some Christmas tropes, but to its poignant manner, where it's really, again, thematically great, but at the same time, absolutely hilarious. I saw this film 3 times in theaters, and it's just one of those films that now I have on rotation for one of the Christmas movies that I happen to watch every single year. Of course, coming into my number 6 is going to be This Is the End. I absolutely love the whole entire concept about this. I'm still waiting for the sequel that Seth Rogen talked about called This Is Really the End, with a whole different bunch of cast members besides Seth and Jay. Really, This Is the End is hilarious. And I know it was based off a short, and then they made it into a full feature film. All these celebrities, the apocalypse starts happening, and only around 7 or 8 of them are alive, and it's time for them to survive the apocalypse. It's a fantastic idea. It's super. It just happens to be one of my favorite comedies of this decade because of the cast's interaction with one another. James Franco, Danny McBride, Jonah Hill, Seth Rogen, Jay Baruchel, Craig Robinson, all fascinating, fantastic actors in here, but they're all bringing different layers to it, and it really is very meta at the same time, because this actually came out the year after Jonah Hill got nominated for an Oscar. They play into that whole part. They play into different escalated versions of each other, and of course there's a little whole bit in here about Michael Cera in the early act of this film that is just outstanding. This film truly does feel that it was heavily improvised, but I'm all for that. Of course, coming in at my number 5 is another Seth Rogen film that came out actually this year that I'm absolutely adoring, and that is Longshot. I absolutely love this movie. Now, I know this is a romantic comedy, but I wanted to place in here because the romance element works so well, and like I mentioned with The Night Before, it feels like a real film. It feels like you believe in this relationship forming, but the comedy in here is great. There are multiple lines in here that I've been quoting throughout the whole entire year. There's one moment in particular where he's dressed up at a very important thing, and it's just the line he says I've been quoting throughout the whole year. I remember being in the audience at South by Southwest for the premiere of this. That was the line that the whole crowd erupted in a roar, and you couldn't hear anything going on the screen. But I've seen this movie countless times this year. I keep watching it. I keep falling in love with these characters, and I just keep laughing my ass off through the whole entire thing. Before we get any further into this list, guys, make sure, again, if you guys are new here, to comment down below. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Do you guys agree with my list? Do you not? Are there films that I'm missing? Let's discuss them down below, guys. And of course, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you guys are new here, because I want to talk movies with you every single day if I possibly can. I post new videos almost every day. Usually almost every day. And of course, if you guys are also new here and you want to check out films early, go check out Sandwich on Films down below. And of course, the biggest thing possible, guys, is a big thank you to you for clicking on this video, and a big thank you to my Patreon supporters, because without you, I wouldn't be able to do this. And of course, before we get further on, I do have some honorable mentions. One of them being Booksmart, another great film from this year, Trainwreck, Spy, Easy A, and She's Out of My League. And 50-50, I think, was in this decade. I almost put it in here. The reason I didn't, though, was because it is more of a drama for me. I do feel like that is very more heavily relied onto that drama part, and I didn't want to bog down the dramatic moments in it, per se. But coming down at my number 4 is going to be Girls Trip, one of the films that actually was the biggest surprise of this decade for me. Now, when I saw the trailer for this, I'm like, I've seen this film all the time before. It gets great reviews. I'm like, really? I had multiple friends telling me that I needed to see Girls Trip. So my friend who actually used to work at Harkins Theaters decided to say, hey, come with me, I'll take you for free. We went and saw it, and I almost pissed my pants laughing. What a hilarious film that at the same time is also just feeling real. It also reminds me back of The Night Before of how it feels real. And these girls, their chemistry with one another is fantastic, and it opened the world to me of Tiffany Haddish, who I am obsessed with now. People get tired of her shtick. I don't. I think she's absolutely the big charming spot of Girls Trip, and I do want to see more of her in different roles. The Oath from last year with Ike Barinholtz, she's great in, and I want to see more of that from her, because she truly has an edge to her, while at the same time bringing that same comedic sensibilities, but also that sweet side, and she's just that friend that I could relate to, because that's who I would be if that was my group of friends of us going out. I love Girls Trip. It's sweet, it's endearing, it's hilarious, and it's really a friendship comedy at the same time of being very raunchy. And coming in at my number 3 is going to be 21. And yes, 22 Jump Street. I had to make a little bit of a cheat in here. I usually have a cheat on every single one of these decade lists. But I put these two because I couldn't decide. Because I think the first 21 Jump Street has more laughs to it. But 22 Jump Street itself, the sequel, had bigger laughs for me. And I laughed harder in the second one, but at the same time I laughed more in the first one. I absolutely keep watching these films over and over and over and over and over, and I just can't stop. I love these movies so much, and the amount of fun that I have with them. Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum are brilliant together. Brilliant casting in there, and opened the world that Channing Tatum is a comedic star and should be doing more of that content. It also opened the doors to Phil and Chris Miller, who are just excellent in this movie. Like, as a direction, they're great, and I really hope that we actually get one more 21 Jump Street to solidify a trilogy and make one of the best comedic trilogies that we've ever had. I know they were talking about doing a Men in Black. They should have done that instead of Men in Black International, to be completely honest, but I'm absolutely stunned by how great this movie, and I can't stop rewatching it. I mean, on my number 2 is going to be What We Do in the Shadows, one of the best comedies of all time. Taika Waititi directs his vampire mockumentary in such style, such flavor, and such elegancy that is absolutely beautiful to look at, and at the same time, such a big mythology, but also drop-dead hilarious. They almost throughout the whole movie, I am bursting out with laughter, especially when they start inviting all the tourists in. That whole scene alone, I just die. It's just one of the most charming films that you love all the characters, you're invested into this world, and for an hour and like 35 minutes, you were just laughing your ass off constantly. Coming in at my number 1 is probably the comedy I've surprisingly watched the most this decade, even though it just came out last year. But I was watching this almost every single night before I went to bed, and that is Game Night. One of the biggest surprises of last year, made it into my top 10 last year, and one of my favorite films of this decade as well. I love Game Night. I think it is hilarious. I die laughing from it. The whole pulling out the bullet scene is just... I will randomly think about that and just start laughing my ass off. Everything that has to do with Jesse Plemons' character, great. Like, just great. This is such a smart comedy that adds into so much more. While it might not be like the best story ever, but it keeps you hooked on the edge of your seat of where the story is going to go. You're laughing throughout it constantly. It's a little dark, it's a little gritty, but it's a little bit scary, but it feels real. And I love that type of comedy. It doesn't feel like it's elevated to any other level, and it feels like it actually could particularly happen in some sort of way. I just fall in love with this. I love Rachel McAdams. She is perfection. I actually would have put her up that she should have gotten nominated for a Golden Globe last year for this film. I think a lot of people missed out on Game Night, and I think this is definitely the movie that you should check out this decade. If you're going to check out one comedy from this list, it's got to be Game Night. I freaking love Game Night. It's so good. But guys, that's going to be my top 10 comedies of the decade. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Do you guys like this list? Do you not? Do you agree with me? Let's discuss it down below, guys. Thank you guys again so much for clicking on this video. And of course, until next time, keep laughing, keep having fun, and look out for more videos soon. Stay classy.